She's like a sickness in my brain, a vision standing by the window pane. She ripples through the blinds and leaves me in a daze. It's in the way her body moves me, the way she grabs me and intoxicates, until the signals in my mind forget to operate. Fragile skull, I take my pleasure from my alcohol. She'll never give you any time at all. She just comes and goes, you know, and she's got me living in a chemical love, and
Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel and thank you for joining me for another coffee and crime time. I have two cases that I want to talk about this week. I'm going to cover one case today and another case in the next coffee and crime time, and they both center around intimate partner violence. In today's episode, I'm going to tell you about Newlywed Christie Chen, who was brutally murdered during her dream honeymoon in Fiji. And then in the next coffee and crime time, we're going to talk about Courtney Clenny, a woman who has recently been arrested and accused of stabbing her boyfriend to death in their Miami apartment. I came across these two cases around the same time, and obviously I saw some similarities there. In one case, we have a man who's being accused of murdering his wife. In another case, we have a woman who's being accused of murdering her boyfriend. So there's a lot to discuss and unpack in both of these cases, but let's have a quick word from our sponsor, Audible, and then we'll dive right in. Now, for those of you who don't already know, and I feel like so many people already know what Audible is because almost everybody I know actually uses Audible, but Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment, and it's all in one place. At Audible, you can find the largest selection of audiobooks ranging from bestsellers, new releases, celebrity memoirs, language, business, motivation, history, science fiction, and more. They also have thousands of binge-worthy podcasts and guided meditations and fitness stuff. It's amazing. As a voracious reader and a lifelong learner, Audible has become so integral in my life because I have so many things I want to learn, but I have very, very little time to just sit down and read a book. I have zero time for that. With Audible, everything I want is right on my device and I can listen while I get other things done. So not only does it make my day-to-day tasks like doing laundry or running on the treadmill or grocery shopping or stuff like that, it makes all of those things go by quicker and feel less mundane, but I'm also using that time to enrich myself in my mind instead of like mindlessly scrolling through TikTok or watching like Love is Blind on Netflix. With Audible, you can always find the perfect title for whatever you're doing, wherever you're going, or whatever you're feeling. Whether it's comedy, true crime, science fiction, history, health, and fitness, you can squeeze in a guided meditation or a workout without having to go to the gym. I use Audible when I research certain cases and deep dives, and the app has a number of tools that make it so convenient for that purpose. Usually when I'm listening to an audiobook on Audible, I'm not actually sitting at my desk. I'm never listening to an audiobook and just sitting at my desk because I like to do things at the same time and sort of multitask. So if I hear something that's important in the audiobook that I'm listening to, something that I want to return to later, I can clip it. And this lets me mark certain audio clips, audio excerpts, and it allows me to make a note of what that little clip is so I can return to it later when I am at my desk and I'm making notes and I want to remember what it was that I heard. I also use Audible every night when I go to bed because I've never been able to sleep in complete silence, and I've been listening to audiobooks at night since before it was so convenient. So I love how Audible has a sleep option on their app, and I can set a timer for when the audiobook will stop so that I don't get too far ahead in the story while I'm sleeping. I can even set it to stop at the end of the chapter, which is what I usually end up doing. With an Audible membership, you can download titles and listen offline anytime, anywhere. The Audible app is free and can be installed on all smartphones and tablets, and you can listen across your devices without losing your spot. Having an Audible membership is the only way to go, in my opinion, because every month you get a credit for a free title, and you can use that credit to purchase any audiobook that you want, even the long and expensive ones, which is what I usually do. And Audible membership members don't have to worry about using all of their credits right away or losing them because you can keep your credits for up to a year. And if you want to save them up to, use them all at once and binge a whole series at once, you can also do that. If you aren't crazy about the title you've chosen, you can also swap it out for another one. And the titles in your Audible library are yours to keep forever. I mean, if you saw my Audible library, it's so extensive. Maybe I'll put a little B-roll in here of me just scrolling through it. And it's almost all history. It's like true crime and history. True crime is for work. History is what I just love to listen to on the day-to-day for fun. With an Audible membership, you'll also get access to Audible's Popular Plus catalog, and it's filled with thousands of audiobooks, original entertainment, guided fitness and meditation, sleep tracks for better rest, and tons of podcasts, including ad-free versions of some of your favorite shows and series. And all of this is included with your membership, so you can download and stream all you want, no credits needed. Audible allows me to pursue passions and interests I have that don't necessarily have a purpose right now. Like they don't relate to any specific video or case I'm working on, but instead, they just help me expand my knowledge generally, which I feel makes me a better content creator because I have so much of this broad information to pull from. I've been obsessed with neurobiology lately and, the power of this computer in our heads, known as the brain. My mind is blown by the unlimited capability and capacity of our brains, and I'm so interested in how the brain has evolved in humans over time. So I'm currently listening to The Brain, The Story of You by David Eagleman, and I'm learning so much and clipping so much so that if I ever need to refer back to the book for a future case or a story that we're talking about, I have all my notes and points of interest in one place. You can also listen to this audiobook for free or take your pick from an unmatched selection of audiobooks. New members can try Audible free for 30 days and they get full access to thousands and thousands of all you can listen to audiobooks, original entertainment, and podcasts included in the Plus catalog. With your 30 days free, you'll get a credit. You can spend it on any audiobook that you want, and that audiobook is yours to keep. Visit audible.com/StephanieHarlowe or text Stephanie Harlowe to 500-500. Once again, all you have to do is go to audible.com/Stephanie Harlowe or text Stephanie Harlowe to 500-500. There's an E on the end of Stephanie and Harlowe, just so you know. Thank you so much to Audible for sponsoring today's video. Thank you so much to Audible for existing. Seriously, I use Audible every single day, so you guys should check it out too. Let's dive into today's video. So I'll try to start from the beginning. Christie Chen was a 36-year-old woman who had moved to Memphis, Tennessee to study to become a pharmacist after working as a pastry chef in Colorado. In Memphis, she met 38-year-old Bradley Robert Dawson, who was working as an IT specialist for a nonprofit group called Youth Villages. And according to their website, Youth Villages provides help for children and young people who suffer from a wide range of emotional, mental, and behavioral problems. Now, there isn't a lot of information about how Christie and Bradley met, how their relationship progressed, what they had in common, or what they saw in each other. It seems like even the people who were closest to them don't really know that information. Some sources say that the two met in 2015 while planning the bachelorette party for a mutual friend, while other friends of Christie's say that it was really a whirlwind romance that culminated in a small private wedding on February 18th, 2022. So I only saw this reported in one place, that Bradley and Christie had met in 2015 while planning this bachelorette party. All of the other sources basically said they had just recently met, like I said, a whirlwind romance, and then they're getting married. And in my experience, that's never a good sign. Now, I know there's going to be people in the comments who are the exception to the rule, who are like, oh, I knew from the moment I met my wife or my husband that they were the one, or I only dated my wife or husband for a month, and then we were married, and we've been in love and going strong ever since. Of course that happens sometimes. You get lucky. You get lucky. But a whirlwind romance typically is not going to work out. And that's because the kind of people who embark on whirlwind romances are the kind of people who believe in love at first sight. I do not believe in love at first sight. I believe in attraction at first sight. I believe in, some sort of initial connection at first sight. But of course, I don't believe in love at first sight, because love is not something that you just fall into. It's something that you build and work on over a long period of time. It comes after sacrifice. It comes after compromise. It comes after hard times and good times and experiencing all that together. It comes after seeing the person that you are with, in a relationship with, at their very worst. Love at first sight doesn't exist. So anybody who sort of embarks on a whirlwind romance, they're kind of thinking like, oh, this is perfect. This is everything I've always wanted. This person is everything I've always wanted. I'm going to marry them because there's nothing else out there for me. This person is it, and everything's going to be great, and it's always going to be like this forever. We're always just going to be happy and just, going strong the whole time for the rest of our lives. And it's not true. It's kind of what Disney movies and fairy tales have set us up to believe. Princess meets prince. Princess falls in love. Princess lives happily ever after. The end. It doesn't work like that. So to me, that is a red flag immediately. Now, a source close to Christie who asked to not be identified, they claim that this marriage between Christie and Bradley, it took many of Christie's friends by surprise, because only a few of them had even met Bradley before this quickly planned wedding. But Christie's friends also said that Christie had never mentioned any arguments or tension between herself and her boyfriend, who became her husband. The day after their small wedding, Christie and Bradley hosted a party at a historic inn located in Memphis, and there was about 20 people in attendance for this very intimate reception. And then Christie and Bradley returned to the $250,000 home they shared on Elsie Avenue in the Cooper Young area of Memphis, and they went back to their lives for a few months. Abby Messel, a neighbor who lived across the street from Bradley and Christie, she said she never heard the couple argue even once. She also said that Bradley, who she'd known for 10 years, he didn't have a mean bone in his body, and he was very shy but friendly. Now, Christie had achieved her goal of becoming a pharmacist, and she was a good one. She worked for a chain of Kroger stores, and in April of 2021, Christie was presented with the Wolters Kluwer Clinical Drug Information Award of Excellence in Clinical Communication from the University of Tennessee, where she had attended college. And Christie's passion in medicine was basically to address social disparities in medical care. She was very into this. It was very important to her. She talked about it a lot. And you can tell that Christie was smart. She seemed fun and quirky, a little bit offbeat. And according to her friends, Christie was always a sweet person who just wanted everyone to feel included. And she also didn't have a mean bone in her body. She was very much looking forward to her honeymoon, even though the honeymoon had been pushed off to the following July. And Christie had told friends and neighbors how excited she was to spend some romantic alone time with her new husband and then return home to start their lives together and to start a family. The much-anticipated honeymoon was to take place in July of 2022, and the resort that Christie and Bradley had chosen for the location of their honeymoon is the place that dreams are made of. And when I was reading about this case, I was like, oh my God, how great could it be? Everybody's raving about this resort. It's pretty amazing. Turtle Island is a 500-acre private island located in Fiji, and it's so secluded and luxurious that only 14 couples can stay on the island at once. Basically, they only have enough bungalows for 14 couples. The resort is also located on the same shores where the 1980 Brooke Shields movie Blue Lagoon was filmed. Don't get me started on the toxicity of that movie and a 14-year-old Brooke Shields filming these very sexually suggestive scenes with an 18-year-old man who played across from her. Don't even get me started on it, but basically let's just remember that this is a beautiful location, a stunning location, and visitors to the resort will stay in one of the 14 private beachfront villas where they will be assigned their own personal butler for the duration of their stay. Now, the butler does it all. The butler plans and arranges all of the couple's meals, whether they decide to dine with the rest of the island's guests or have a romantic candlelight dinner on the beach with just the two of them or eat in their villa. The butler will also arrange a multitude of activities that are available to Turtle Island guests, such as horseback riding, snorkeling, kayaking, hiking, and island tours. Now, the only people on the island at any given time are the guests. The resort only accepts couples or doubles, save for 1 week out of the year, which is known as Family Week, and then you can bring your family and kids and stuff. But for the rest of the time, there's only 28 guests at the resort. all the time, along with the staff who are working there, who also occupy the island or the surrounding islands that dot the turquoise waters around Turtle Island. So it's fancy, it's exclusive, and that means it's expensive. Very expensive. The resort has a 5-night minimum and will run you about $3,000 a night. I think that's on the low end. I don't know which bungalow Christie and Bradley were occupying. There's so much still left unknown about this case. So specific bungalows have more amenities or better locations, and then those are more expensive. But on average, it looks like the bungalows will run you about $3,000 to $4,000 a night, depending on which one you choose. And I'm going to interrupt myself for a minute and ask, where did all of this money come from? Okay, I know pharmacists make decent money, but Christie hadn't been a pharmacist for very long, maybe just a couple of years. And the entry-level salary for a pharmacist in Tennessee is just under $50,000. And even if you look at the high end of salaries, you'd still only be making about $120,000 a year. Not that that's not a lot, right? That's a lot. It's a good salary. But to be able to afford the mortgage on, quite an expensive house, $250,000 was a brand new house, and to afford this kind of honeymoon, if Christie's new husband, Bradley, worked for a nonprofit, how much money could he have possibly been bringing home? Like I said, they lived in a pretty expensive brand new house. They were able to afford to take a very expensive honeymoon, which even if they only stayed for the minimum of 5 nights, it would still be running them around like $15,000 on the low end before taxes, before any other expenses like airfare, things like that. It makes me wonder if Christie maybe had some family money, because one of her friends had made a comment that Christie was an only child and she would often go on expensive and luxurious trips with her mother, and then she would post about these trips on Instagram. But also, looking at Bradley Dawson, this doesn't appear to have been his first romantic trip to Fiji. Bradley Dawson had been married previously to another woman in 2019, and it appears that their wedding ceremony took place in Fiji. It's not clear whether it was the same resort or not. I tend to feel that it wasn't, right? Because if I'm getting married to a guy and he had gotten married to a different woman in Fiji before, I probably wouldn't be like, yeah, let's go to that same resort where you got married to somebody else and, make our own memories there. I don't think I would do that. I'd probably want to go someplace else. And there's plenty of really beautiful, luxurious, high-end resorts in Fiji to choose from. So most likely, in my opinion, it wasn't the same resort. But whose idea was it to go to Fiji? Was it Bradley's idea because he'd been there for his past wedding and he really liked it? Was it Christie's idea because she was accustomed to traveling in very high-end ways with her mother? I'm not sure. But Bradley's first marriage ended in divorce, a divorce that was finalized just 1 month before Bradley married Christie. So I don't know, maybe Bradley and Christie were just really good at saving or investing. Maybe they'd gone small on the wedding so they could go big on the honeymoon. Maybe their parents paid for the honeymoon as a wedding gift. I'm not sure. What I do know is that shortly after arriving on Turtle Island, something happened that left Christie Chen brutalized and lifeless on the floor of the bathroom in the bungalow she was sharing with her new husband, Bradley. And when Christie was found by the butler, Bradley Dawson was nowhere to be found. Reportedly, the alarm was raised when Christie and Bradley failed to show up for 2 meals in a row on July 9th, just 2 days after they had checked in. After the couple missed breakfast, their butler went to their bungalow where he found a do not disturb sign on the door. But when they missed lunch as well, the butler returned and he let himself in with his own key so that he could clean the bungalow, because they do that every day. And that was when the butler found Christie in the bathroom, reportedly shoved into the small space between the toilet and the wall. She was covered in blood, and the cistern of the toilet was cracked, according to eyewitness reports, but this has not been confirmed by the resort. In fact, much of this has not been confirmed by the resort, who have just acknowledged that an incident happened, and they have said they aren't going to give any specifics at this time. But after an autopsy done in Fiji, it appears that Christie had died from multiple traumatic injuries, including blunt force trauma to her head and multiple lacerations to her face. So Christie Chen is no longer alive. And I think we can all agree that someone does not die accidentally from multiple traumatic injuries to their head and multiple lacerations to their face. And if they were in some sort of accidental scenario where they were getting all of these multiple injuries, they probably wouldn't then crawl into the bathroom and then into the little toilet area and then like shove themselves into a tiny space between the toilet and the wall. So there's certainly signs of foul play here. And Christie's doting husband was nowhere to be found when Christie's body was found. Bradley Dawson had left his cell phone and his smartwatch in the bungalow, but he had taken his passport and his wallet, and he fled, not only leaving the bungalow, but the entire island. So let's go back to the previous night, the night of July 8th, when Bradley and Christie attended something called Family Fun Night, which apparently is like a sort of party on the beach that included the resort guests as well as the resort staff and their families. Reportedly, both Bradley and Christie were very drunk, and they began to argue when Bradley was behaving inappropriately with another woman on the beach. Other witnesses mentioned that they had also heard the couple arguing over dinner earlier that night as well. Bradley and Christie left the party after arguing. They walked to their bungalow, and not long after that, guests in the bungalow next door claimed they heard arguing, a loud scream, and then silence. After this, Bradley Dawson was reportedly seen by resort security pacing the beach, walking the length of the island, and then he took a kayak and he peaced out. So here's a Google Earth image of Turtle Island. You can see it's located in an archipelago of other islands known as the Yasawa Islands. And Bradley and his kayak ended up over here on the island of Matawalavu, a remote island over a mile away that's only occupied by indigenous locals who were obviously surprised to see a tourist that far off the beaten path. Manoa Retulel, a 49-year-old man who lives on Matawalavu, spotted Bradley, and he said, quote, "I was a bit alarmed because these are very wealthy people. We don't find them on our beaches. We get backpacking snorkelers and surfers, but not people from Turtle Island. They are a rarity around here. These are millionaires, and they are never far from minders from the resort." End quote. Other locals claim that Bradley paddled up to the island and landed on the deserted beach between 2 and 3 a.m., and Manoa was worried about Bradley when he saw him, saying, quote, "He had blood and wounds coming from his feet and palms, which might have been the result of landing on nearby coral. He also appeared to be in a panic." End quote. Manoa tried to get Bradley to take some food and water, but Bradley refused, and he kept insisting he was okay. Finally, Manoa was able to get Bradley to take some water and then, calm down enough to sort of explain what was going on. According to Manoa, quote, "He said, 'Please, I need to call the police. He didn't tell us that he had killed his wife, but I could still smell alcohol on him.' He continued to repeat that we had a fight and offered no start to or end to that story. Just kept saying we had a fight." End quote. Bradley Dawson was taken into police custody at around 3 p.m. on July 10th, and he was transported to Viti Levu, the largest island in the Republic of Fiji and home to a large majority of Fiji's population. So we have two attorneys who have sort of taken control of the narrative since Bradley's arrest and since he's been remanded after a July 27th appearance in the High Court of Lautoka. We have Ronald Gordon, who is the attorney for Christie's family, and we have Iqbal Khan, who is Bradley Dawson's attorney, and he's from Fiji. And of course, they see this case and the details surrounding it very differently. Iqbal Khan claims his client is innocent and that Bradley was so traumatized from whatever had happened in that bungalow that he was unable to talk for 4 days after being charged with his wife's murder. And I do have to step in here and mention that reportedly Bradley was talking to Manoa Retulel before he was arrested. He was telling him he didn't need water, he didn't need food, he was okay. He was telling them that, he was fighting with his wife. He said that repeatedly. He kept saying he needed to call the police, etc., etc. But okay, we'll go on the narrative that Bradley was just too traumatized to say any words for days after he was caught. And I guess in a way that does make sense. Possibly he wasn't traumatized from his wife being brutally murdered, and possibly him being the one who brutally murdered her. He was traumatized after he was blamed for it because, that's what his lawyer said. He was so traumatized, so upset after he was blamed for his wife's murder. His lawyer, Iqbal Khan, said, quote, "Something surprising happened. Bradley's okay now, but he was really distressed when it happened. Last week, he was in a desperate condition, but he's picking up now. It's a horrendous thing to happen on your honeymoon." End quote. Oh yes, poor Bradley. What a terrible thing to have happen on your honeymoon. You can't plan for these things, you know? You can control where you go and what fun activities you do when you're there, but you can't control the weather or the ocean tides or the brutal murder of your wife. There's no rain checks for that. Like, sorry your wife died. Here's a coupon for a free weekend at the resort for future use because we know this is a terrible thing to have happen on your honeymoon. Maybe it's the language barrier with the lawyer, but it really does feel like Bradley's attorney is trying to make it seem like this was some mysterious thing that happened to Christie, something surprising, he called it, something that really put a damper on the honeymoon for Bradley. He hasn't clarified what this surprising thing was, but are we really going with the he didn't do it defense? Are we going to do that? When Bradley was the only person who knew her on the island, and like I said, it's a remote island, so it's not as if there's random people on and off the island. There's pretty heavy security. It's a high-end resort. You know, as the local was saying, Manoa, he was like, there's millionaires over there, you know, so it's not just like open and anybody can come in. Are we really going to like try to go with the narrative that this was an accident or it wasn't Bradley? It's just really hard to go down that path. So the lawyer, Iqbal Khan, he goes on to say that there's no way his client will be convicted of murder. And even though he has yet to see the full police case or post-mortem results, he's convinced the murder charges will be thrown out. Khan said, quote, "There's no way he can be convicted of murder. No way. Full stop. On the evidence they have presented so far, there's no proof of the charge of murder with intention to kill or premeditation. Nothing of that sort whatsoever. On the face of it, it looks like an accident. But I will be able to confirm that once I get the full disclosure next week and get in front of the other witnesses. I'm in touch with his mother in America. All his family and friends are devastated because he was a nice, quiet fellow. He's never been involved with the law before. And then this happened. This is something new." End quote. You know who else was a nice, quiet fellow? Brian Laundrie, Chris Watts, Scott Peterson. You know who else had never been in trouble with the law before they were accused of killing their significant others? Brian Laundrie, Chris Watts, Scott Peterson. And listen, I was with Bradley's lawyer for a second there. Maybe there isn't enough to prove premeditation. From what it sounds like, both Bradley and Christie had been drinking. Alcohol has a very strong way of adding fuel to any fire. You know, they argued, things got out of hand, crime of passion. Okay, I can buy that. But then the lawyer, Khan, he goes on to say, on the face of it, it looks like an accident. How? From the initial reports coming out, Christie seemed to be in very bad shape when her body was found. How can you call this an accident? Christie's family had traveled to Fiji in the wake of her death to have her body prepared to be sent back to the United States for burial, but they ended up having to make the difficult decision of instead having their daughter cremated because reportedly her body was too badly damaged to embalm and send home. The Chen family lawyer, Ronald Gordon, he's reported that Christie had been so badly beaten, she had suffered such deep lacerations to the side of her head near her eyes, that the family had been told by the medical professionals the embalming fluid would have leaked out. We're going to return back to this point in a moment. Ronald Gordon, the Chen family lawyer, he also claimed that he will fight Khan's attempts at getting Bradley bail because Gordon believes Bradley is a flight risk, and when he jumped in a kayak the night his wife was murdered or died accidentally, Bradley had been attempting to get to the mainland so that he could leave Fiji, and he purposely left behind his phone and smartwatch, 2 devices, which could have been used to track him via GPS. However, Bradley did bring his passport and wallet, 2 things he would need if he was trying to get the hell out of Dodge. And I mean, I do have to agree. I don't know what Bradley Dawson's long-term plan was, like if he was going to catch a plane and leave Fiji altogether, but he definitely did not want to be on Turtle Island when Christie's dead body was discovered. Am I right? Like, that's pretty clear. And when he was seen by locals on the nearby island, he started talking about calling the police and having a fight with his wife. But you were just on an island where you are literally one of, at the most, 28 guests. You have your own personal butler whose only job is to deliver you anything you want, anytime you want. So it seems that if Bradley was really worried about contacting the authorities, he would have done that on the island, on Turtle Island, by letting the hotel security know, having them call the police. It's going to be much more professional. You don't have to do anything. And all of that could have been done without a midnight kayak ride. It's giving me big time Brian Laundrie vibes. Big time, right? Brian Laundrie leaves Gabby Petito, drives all the way home in the van, and then he doesn't talk to anybody, and he's like, I don't know what happened, And I'm also working on an update on Brian Laundrie, what's recently come out about him, his letters, his journal, stuff like that. I am going to be putting out a Coffee and Crime Time early next month about that, but it gives me big-time Brian Laundrie vibes. Let me know in the comments if you agree. I don't see why Bradley Dawson would have fled the scene in a kayak and went to another island if he wasn't feeling that he was going to be blamed for this. And why would he feel that he would be blamed for it? Well, maybe because he showed up on that other island covered in blood. Maybe because he was the only one there. Maybe because he and Christie had been fighting basically since they got to this resort and people had seen that, including, the resort management. Christie's death being an accident, it just doesn't check out for me. It doesn't seem to fit here with this scenario. And I'm not saying that it's not. I'm not saying that it isn't a possibility because we don't really have all the facts. We don't have the evidence. We don't really know exactly what we're looking at here. And it's very possible that Bradley is completely 1,000,000% innocent. That's possible. Anything is possible. It just doesn't feel right to me. Let me know what you think in the comments. The fact that I believe Bradley definitely had something to do with his wife's murder, it doesn't mean it's guaranteed that he will 100% be found guilty of her murder. I will say that because there are a lot of factors at play. This crime happened off of U.S. soil, and when a U.S. citizen dies abroad, the investigation's usually handled by the local authorities, with the U.S. State Department acting as a liaison between the foreign government and the victim's family. Another responsibility of the State Department is coordinating the local burial or the return of the remains to the U.S. because there's a bunch of logistical and regulatory requirements, and these all can vary between countries, even between states in the U.S. So, as we had mentioned previously, the Chen family lawyer has stated that they'd wanted to get Christie embalmed in Fiji and then return her to the U.S. for burial. But we were also told that her injuries were far too great for that to happen, and her parents had to instead have Christie cremated in Fiji before returning to the U.S. Now, it looks like Fiji will be the country responsible for actually charging Bradley Dawson with a crime and prosecuting him if that's what they choose to do. And as far as I can tell, the only kind of trial which could possibly happen in the United States, it wouldn't be a criminal one, it would be a civil one if Christie's parents choose to bring a lawsuit against Dawson. Like, for instance, in the event he does not face charges in Fiji, or even if he does face charges in Fiji, they may still decide to charge him with a civil suit. Now, it's not explicitly said, but I think it's safe to assume that there was an autopsy performed on Christie by the Fiji officials before she was cremated. But forensic pathologist Michael Baden has recently come out and mentioned that he feels it's odd that Christie's family did not get her remains back to the U.S. for a second autopsy. This article says, quote, Ronald Gordon, the attorney for Chen's family, previously told Fox News Digital the victim had suffered such horrific injuries that the hospital staff told her parents she would have to be cremated before being returned to the United States. Lacerations around her eyes were so deep that the hospital advised her family against embalming Chen in order to transfer her remains, he said. The wounds were so severe, the morgue attendant feared that embalming fluid might leak out, end quote. So I was looking into all of this because I know that embalming fluid is toxic to living humans and to the environment. Basically anything with a pulse, anything living, embalming fluid is really bad, specifically the formaldehyde in it. And I was wondering maybe if Fiji had sort of phased out of embalming and made it a practice to lean more towards cremation because, there have been different reports that embalming fluids can leak into the ground after a burial and get into the groundwater and contaminate it and make people sick, and it's causing cancer and things like that. So I said, as a small place with lots of islands, maybe they've kind of pulled away from embalmment and from burial in general. I couldn't really find anything specifically about it. It does look like there are burials that do happen in Fiji, as well as cremations. Nobody's really taken a strong stance against burial, but it could vary on the specific island or the specific place in Fiji. And for Christie's family, I'm sure losing her was hard enough. The knowledge that she may have been brutally murdered at the hands of her new husband would only add to that. But the fact that Christie died in a different country, it complicates things so much. There's so many hoops you have to jump through, decisions you have to make, things you have to do. My mind was blown by it. It terrified me, actually. And there's actually insurance you can buy, I found out, where if you happen to die in a foreign country, like this insurance will cover all of this, because not only is it ridiculously complicated, but it's expensive. So it's also possible that with all of that, and with the medical professionals saying that they were worried about embalmment fluid leaking, Christie's parents may have just decided on cremation as the easiest of the difficult paths, like whatever it took to get home with Christie the quickest. So Dr. Michael Baden, he claims that Christie's body could have been returned to the U.S. in a sealed casket for further forensic analysis, and he said, quote, "The body doesn't have to be embalmed. The United States is one of the very few countries that does embalming. Even if it was a skeletal remains, the body doesn't disappear. What I'm trying to say, the body doesn't disappear. So whatever, no matter what the condition of the body is, the next of kin has a right to make its own burial arrangements. If it's true that they were told it was in no condition to be sent to the United States, then somebody misled them," end quote. I kind of don't like him piping up in this situation like this because he wasn't there, right? He doesn't know what the family was told, and he also doesn't know specifically what the laws are for every small country, every, island in Fiji. He doesn't know specifically. When he says things like, oh, embalming is really only done in the U.S., that's not true. Embalming is done in a lot of countries. So for him to make it seem like it's just something that really most people don't do, that's absolutely inaccurate. And I just don't think that you can judge this family based on the fact that you aren't in their shoes, you aren't experiencing what they're experiencing, you aren't just suddenly overnight hit with this horrendous realization that your daughter's gone, that she's been murdered, and that her body is so traumatized and brutalized that you're being told by medical professionals that it's probably not a great idea to have her embalmed. And you have to sort of take all that in at once and make the best decision you can make with a short amount of time. When in a certain country, you sort of have to follow their lead. People say when in Rome, when in any country, you have to follow their lead. For instance, the United States Embassy, they warn against dying in some countries like Iceland because embalming is not performed in Iceland. So decisions about what to do with the remains, they must be made very quickly. The maximum period before burial is 8 days. Under special circumstances, such as the need for an autopsy, this period can be delayed, but you have to get permission. And getting permission isn't easy. It requires a lot of paperwork, a lot of back and forth, a lot of fines and fees and things like that. So it's a lot. Additionally, some states in the United States, like Alabama, New Jersey, and Alaska, they actually require embalming before a body can be transported in. And international rules are even more complicated, whereas shipping cremated remains comes along with its own rules and regulations, but significantly more simple. So what I'm saying is the family probably had a lot of decisions to make in a short amount of time, and they were already stressed out. They were already on sensory overload from everything that they had going on, everything that they were now realizing in a short period of time that their daughter was dead, that the rest of their lives they need to go on with the knowledge that their daughter is dead without her, their only child, their only daughter, right? She was an only child. In one split second, you realize that probably the most important person in the world to you is no longer alive, and you've got to make these decisions. And they decided on what they thought would get them and their daughter back home as quickly as possible and put the bulk of this nightmare behind them. But this could pose a problem for any charges against Bradley Dawson. Like I said, I'm sure that an autopsy was done. We better hope that the autopsy was done immaculately, with no mistakes, no typos, nothing out of order, so that Bradley's lawyer can't claim that the Fiji officials or the family are trying to cover something up by cremating Christie, by cremating what might be considered the evidence. You only have one autopsy. You only have one chance to get it right. And if Bradley's lawyers can find anything in that autopsy that's out of place or seems to be not 100% complete, they can use that in court to raise reasonable doubt. But that's where we are right now in this case, and I will be looking out for the updates. So actually today, just about 12 hours ago, the Daily Mail posted something about Bradley Dawson, and it says, quote, "The newlywed husband accused of murdering his pharmacist wife in their luxury bungalow on a private Fiji island confessed to police, but later walked back his confession, claiming she was alive when he abandoned her after a drunken fight," new documents reveal. Dawson appeared at the Lautoka High Court in Fiji on Wednesday evening, where his bail hearing was delayed for a second time. Until September 1st, he has not entered a plea. The state is still to disclose its evidence against Dawson and told Justin Rayaz Hamza that it needed another 14 days to file the post-mortem examination report and crime scene photographs. Chen's death was ruled a murder by the medical examiner, who found she had died from a traumatic brain injury caused by a brain bleed, several traumatic head injuries, multiple traumatic injuries to her body. Her cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. In a disclosure document obtained by DailyMail.com, police said at Dawson's first interview, he confessed to the offense, but later he remained silent after seeking legal advice. Yeah, so actually that's something new that I didn't know when I was researching and writing the script for this. It's a small detail, but it's hugely important, right? He confessed. He said that he had done it, I guess, and then he later retracted that and said that Christie was alive when he left. So I don't know why he thinks that anybody would believe that. Like, I don't know if he's saying that when he left, Christie was alive and well. I don't know if he's trying to say, like, they argued, he got mad, he left the bungalow to blow off some steam, and that's when he was seen pacing up and down the beach, and then he came back to the bungalow and found her like that, and then he fled because he was scared. Is he trying to say that? I guarantee you he's trying to say that. I guarantee you that's what he says. I don't know if he's saying when he left her and got in the canoe and went to a different, like, island, she was beaten and bloody and dying, and he's still saying he didn't do it. I'm not sure exactly what he's saying, but it's a small detail that means a lot and could mean a lot, and also could eventually end up, screwing him, really, because it's one thing to say that, you got upset, you guys fought, maybe she did this to herself, and then you fled because you were so scared and she was acting crazy. It's another thing to say that when you left her, she was alive and well, and it may end up, nipping him in the ass. So, also, a previous girlfriend of Bradley's has come out, and, these people come out of the woodwork. I don't know, take it with a grain of salt, but she said she went to school with him. They went to college together, and they dated for a little while, but he was controlling and very jealous, and so the relationship eventually ended. I don't know if she's trying to say that this has something to do with it. I'm sure Bradley could be jealous and could be controlling. That doesn't always make a man into a murderer. I know tons of men who are jealous and controlling and haven't murdered anybody yet, but it does, once again, add fuel to the fire in combination with alcohol and things like that. But from what we can tell about this story so far, it was Bradley who was acting inappropriately with somebody else on the resort, and Christie who seemed to become upset about that. So who knows? Who knows? But we will find out more. Like the article I just read said, looks like they're going to be releasing more information in the next coming weeks, and we'll find out more, and I'll make an update. But until then, let me know what you think about this case so far. Okay, this is future me. I had to scooch back down to my recording booth because as I was editing this video, new information came out, which I'm going to tell you now. So, according to ABC News, in an exclusive interview with ABC News from a jail visiting room, Dawson said he fled on kayak to a neighboring island on July 8th, the day police said Chen died of multiple blunt trauma wounds to her head. He said, quote, "I just wanted to give her some space. It was normal for me to take a walk," he said. He added that the couple was drunk at the time of their argument. Exactly what I said he was going to say. He went for a walk to give her space. She died while he was gone. Dawson was arrested 2 days later. The police did not tell him of his wife's death, Dawson said. Authorities, however, told ABC News that Dawson initially confessed to the murder but stopped cooperating once he secured legal representation. Incarcerated since his arrest, Dawson appeared at a preliminary bail hearing at Fiji's Latuka High Court Wednesday wearing a red-collared shirt, shorts, and flip-flops and was handcuffed to another man. Judge Rayaz Hamza rejected a request from Dawson's attorney to release his client on bail before his trial. And this is what Bradley Dawson's lawyer, Iqbal Khan, says. Quote, "This case may take 2 years. Why should he remain inside for that long?" End quote. Why is it going to take 2 years? During the same hearing, Hamza, who's the judge, also rejected a request from an attorney for the Chen family to serve as a formal party to the case, which would have allowed them access to evidence used in the trial. Hamza says that Fiji law makes the prosecutor the sole representative for victims in criminal cases. According to a police report obtained by ABC News, a vacationer staying at Turtle Island at the same time as the couple said Dawson and his wife appeared happy the evening of the alleged fight. The vacationer said she later heard, quote, "loud banging sounds" from the couple couple's room, according to the police report. She goes on to say, quote, "It was as if someone was drunk and unable to control themselves inside, and then we heard a loud scream followed by a big loud bang, and after that there was complete silence," end quote, she told the police, according to the report. A staff member confirmed to ABC News that the resort received a complaint that night about the noise emanating from the couple's room. The resort waited until the next day to check the room when the couple failed to show up for meals. Dawson, an IT specialist, said he is praying every day for Chen, whom he described as my everything. He said, quote, "What I can say is I am sorry for the situation we are all going through now. We were supposed to have amazing holidays and I lost my wife. Just thinking she is not here anymore is so painful. I am thinking of her all the time," he said. "We were supposed to have an amazing life," end quote. Okay, so this is what I kind of expected to happen. There's one more thing before I tell you what I think about this. So this other article, which recently came out around the same time as this ABC News article, this is a Fox News article. It says Dawson and Chen married in February after just a few months of dating and moved into a new home in Memphis. So they had only known each other for a few months. They had only been dating for a few months. They hadn't met in 2015, as far as I can tell, unless they met in 2015, like briefly, and then reconnected years later. But either way, just a couple of months of dating, you got married, red flag, don't do that. Okay, so let's recap. On the evening of July 8th, Bradley and Christie are seen by multiple guests having a fight on the beach, okay? They go back to their bungalow. That same night, the people in the other bungalows heard a bunch of screaming and yelling, and like somebody inside the room couldn't control themselves, like they were so drunk. And both Bradley and Christie were reported to have been very intoxicated at the beach earlier. So then Bradley's kind of making it seem like as they were fighting, he was like, "Oh, I'm just going to go and give you your space." And he left the room, and then he had no idea what happened afterwards. Not only did he leave the room because they were fighting and he wanted to give her space, but instead of just walking on the beach or, even going to the resort and saying like, "Hey, do you guys have like a separate room you can put me in for tonight so I can give my wife some space?" He decided to take a kayak and go out in the middle of the night and land on some remote, isolated island where there's no resort or anything like that. It's just like indigenous native people who live there. You decided to do that in order to give Christie her space, and you had no idea that anything had happened to her until the police told you, and now you don't know what happened and you don't know what to think about it. How convenient. That's just what I'm getting from it. I mean, I don't know if he's claiming he came back to the room after giving her space, and that's when he found out she was dead, and then he fled to another island. I'm not quite sure, but either way, I personally am not buying it. You let me know what you guys think. And yeah, that's all I got for you, unless something else pops up. But at this point, I have to edit this video at some point. Thank you guys so much for being here. Don't forget to follow me on social media, Twitter and Instagram. Links are in the description box, along with the link to Audible, so you can have your free 30-day trial of Audible. Start listening to a new audiobook now. Also, don't forget to follow my podcast, Crime Weekly, that I co-host every week with retired police detective Derek Levasseur. Right now, we are covering the Summer Wells case, very in-depth. And don't forget to check out our coffee, Criminal Coffee Company, the best coffee ever. All links are in the description box. Don't forget to like this video if you liked it, share it if you think it's worth sharing, and subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, stay beautiful, stay kind, stay safe, and I will see you very, very soon.
Would a levee don't break now, and the bottle's going straight down. And that river runs deep, the mountains get steep, and the voices getting too loud. Oh, these feelings I've buried, it's looking like a cemetery. They're coming back from the grave, calling out my name, better say I Hail Mary. Well, you don't know how deep it goes until it's getting you slowly. And so you got to let it go. I got blood on the strings, blood on the strings, blood on the strings. Being played so my face don't bleed. Got blood on the strings, blood on the strings, blood on the strings. Lord knows it's been a rough week. Yeah, I'm channeling my son house, 'cause I gotta let these blues